Hello and welcome to Center for Victory's podcast of Your Best Day Yet. At Center for Victory, we're here to help unlock, reinforce, and enrich relationships through personal and professional development. I'm Eric Guy, Chief Victory Officer at the Center for Victory. With me once again is the one, the only, the chair with flair, Mr. Dick Singer. Thanks for being on again, sir.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and so today I've asked Dick to think about what he's hearing into 2023. Now, for those of you that don't know Mr. Singer, this man has been a great mentor. He's been in my life, I guess probably going on 15 years here, give or take a couple years. But Dick is a chair for Vistage Worldwide. So Vistage is a CEO advisory group, and Dick has been doing this for longer than I've actually been in part of his groups. And you can speak more to that, Dick. But the reason that I think you can really speak to this as an expert here, some of these questions today, because we're going to be talking about leadership trends for 2023, is that you hear and see all this. You have currently, I believe you have 4 groups of leaders that you're meeting with all the time. You meet with our group every month, a couple other groups every month. You're doing one-to-one coaching. You do it outside of Vistage too, but I mean, so you're hearing from literally, I guess if I'm going to do the math, you're probably with at least 60 to 70 leaders having a conversation and that's on, I know that's on the light end there, because there's other things that you're doing. But those are different conversations you're having all the time with, and these are leaders, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I would think you would put either most or all of them in, good or good or the great category. Hopefully I would be there as well.
We can talk about that later.
Okay. Very, very good. Fair enough, sir. Is there anything else you wanted to share about yourself? And
No, I would like to just speak briefly about Vistage, so people understand
yes,
what the organization is and what we do, because I think it's really critical. I'll give you just a quick background on myself. I was in the broadcasting industry for 30 plus years. During that time, for about 8 of those years, I owned a group of small market radio stations. We had a partner as well. And then started with Vistage when it was called Tech, and that was exactly 20 years ago. So I've been doing that for a long time. But Vistage is a very unique organization. It's been around since 1957, so 65 years of Vistage. And what we do is we work with leaders of companies, owners, presidents, CEOs, whatever their title is, and help them get through the issues that they can't talk to anybody else about. Because they say it's lonely at the top. It really is lonely at the top, and you know that.
yeah. Well, that's the first conversation I had with you, is like, man, I don't know who to have these conversations with. So yes, sir.
So they come to Vistage, which is a confidential forum once a month. They sign a confidentiality agreement. There is nobody in the room that's in a competitive situation to them, and so they're free to talk about whatever it is they want to talk about. And I can tell you, and you know yourself, there are topics that come up in these meetings that I know people aren't talking to anybody else about, and personal as well as business.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a place to relieve the isolation. The members are also held accountable when they bring an issue to the group, and the group helps them work through that issue. They have to come back the following month and tell the group what they've done about that issue. So there's accountability as well. And then I spend 1 to 2 hours every month with each member, one-on-one. And that meeting is really more about holding them accountable for the things that they say they're going to do, helping them to surface issues. As I say to people, I'm the guy who's allowed to ask the questions that nobody else can ask. And those are questions that really need to be asked. And then we have an incredible website, a very robust website, and we have a speakers bureau with over 1,000 speakers, which, in my opinion, is one of the best speakers bureaus in the country. And these are probably 90% of them are probably keynote caliber speakers. But they don't come and do a speech because the group's, it's a small group. They come and they do a interactive workshop with the members on virtually any topic, business or personal, that you can think of. So it's a very robust program for these leaders and for people that work in their companies. We have leadership training programs as well. But it's something that I believe, when I was in the radio business, when I owned radio stations, I would have loved to have an organization like Vistage to turn to. And they were in existence then, but not where I was, and I didn't even know about them, so I wasn't able to find them anyway. The point is that people who run companies, people have to find a place to talk about these issues that they can't talk to anybody else about. They need to know that they're not alone. One of my newer members said to me after a meeting, "Wow, I can't believe I thought I was the only one with these issues."
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's what Vistage does.
Yeah, and that's a good explanation of that. And that's obviously why I got in. Just when I met you, I was dealing with the same kind of stuff, and sometimes it's just being in that group with that caliber of people. These are high caliber people. Sometimes I feel kind of out of place. I mean, just really high caliber people that are going through issues, and sometimes you're just sitting there listening to it, going, "Okay, I just figured out something that I didn't know I even had an issue with. I haven't even said anything." But I figure it out, leave, feel better, and go about it. And that issue processing thing, and I don't know if you'll mention it today, so we can get into the questions. But just all those things that you hear from leaders and the topics that they're going over, what's keeping them up at night. So I think with that, Dick, let's just kind of jump into some of the questions that I had for you. Around just what you're seeing as far as trends, and you're really hearing it from a vast majority of people. So the leadership trends for 2023. What are you hearing the most as far as hot topics? What do you hear the most? What are they talking about?
I think one of the biggest concerns that leaders have today, that I'm hearing from my members, is concern about the potential recession that they're talking about in end of this year or sometime in 24. The economists that we rely on through Vistage are predicting a mild recession, hopefully, but that's a concern because people want to make capital improvements. They're afraid to spend that money. The other big issues are recruiting recruiting employees and retaining employees. It was a big issue certainly after the pandemic, and it still exists, although it's getting a little bit better. And they need to figure out how to keep employees as well as how to hire them.
So around that, when you talk about especially how to get and keep employees, I think I hear about the keep part quite a bit now. You can get them in the door, but if it's a revolving door, what do you do? I mean, what are they doing to tackle some of that? What have you heard?
Well, leaders have to be the leadership style for today, and I think in the near future, the long-term future, is changing. Early on, back in the 40s and 50s and 60s, it was command and control. Then it became a lot more about paying attention to your employees. I think today, what's critical for a leader is to, number one, have empathy. Number two, have emotional intelligence, be able to understand the employees, have a connection to your employees. Employees want to feel that they are valued by the people that they report to. And in a lot of companies, and I hate to say this, but I still run into this, there are still leaders, and you probably know some, who are still into command and control. If it's not my idea, then it's not worth even considering. That happens still, unfortunately. The leaders who are looking at their employees as, I hate to say this too, but as human beings, with feelings and desires and wishes and families, are getting much more out of their employees. They're getting more engaged employees. People want to feel that people care about them. There's a cliche, and you know this cliche. They don't. Nobody cares about what you know until they know what you care. They know you care,
Hmm.
and that's really important. And
Yeah.
employees want to know that that their people, that their employers care about them.
Yeah, and I guess that leads me into kind of my next question there is what are, I mean, obviously see a lot of people, what are they having success with? What are the great leaders having success with? Is there a handful of things? I mean, I can obviously tell you what I think, but since we have you that hears it all the time, what are you hearing?
I think what's where the success comes with employees is one is uh, educating them. When you invest in your employees, you get a lot more stickiness. And I'm not. This is not to plug Vistage, but kind of I have employers who have people in our Vistage leadership programs
Hmm.
learning about how to be a leader. Uh, those people really appreciate the fact that their employers are spending the money, investing the money in them. Uh, those things are important. I think getting to know their employees is important. I think securing a feeling, an employee needs to know that the door's open, that if you need to come talk to me, come talk to me. No one's going to beat you up. No one's going to yell at you. If you disagree with what I have to say, let's talk about it. So it's a question. It comes down to they've got to be open and transparent and talk about the things that the employees want to talk about and not to blow them off. Doesn't
Yeah.
mean you have to follow through on everything an employee suggests, but they at least they want to know they're being heard.
I guess when you look at that, and I can certainly say, that is true. When people are spending that time, talking to their employees, and what I'm hearing, especially from that younger generation, is they're really embracing a leader who asks them how they're doing. I mean, just simple things. Ask them how they're doing.
Yeah,
How's the family that is less task oriented. And I don't know, yeah, I'm sure I know your answer to this, but I'll ask you anyhow, because we've talked about it quite a bit. W- We do know some of those companies that are command and control. I think they're doing themselves a huge disservice, and I don't think they're going to be competitive in the future. Would you agree with that?
I absolutely agree with that. I think I think people are seeing they are seeing that the grass, in terms of those companies, that the grass really is greener on the other side. And certainly, they're hearing from people who are their friends who have jobs in companies where it's not command and control. So they know there's a better opportunity out there. And those people who are the command and control leaders are going to find themselves with a lot of turnover, a lot of churn within their companies, and probably a company moving on a downward trend instead of an upward trend, instead of growing. That's To me, that's going to happen. The other thing I wanted to bring up, and of course this applies to some things that you do. Uh, what I find really interesting still is when it comes to the hiring process, that people are still relying on their gut feeling about somebody, and people aren't using any kind of assessment when they're hiring to see, is this the right person for the bus and will they fit in the right seat? And
Hmm.
that to me is a huge mistake, and that creates even more turnover in a company. And then you get a revolving door because you're hiring people because your gut tells you. Certainly, your gut is part of the hiring process. There's no question about that. But if you're not using an assessment to see if somebody will fit in your culture, will fit the job that you have for them, then you're making a huge mistake. A huge mistake. Relying on your gut to hire people goes back to the era of command and control, really.
Yeah. And unfortunately, there are still people that do that and, guess, and that's not a good hiring tactic to guess,
No,
right?
right.
So,
right.
With talking about great leaders, like the great leaders, you know, how do you see great leaders managing themselves? Well, let me ask you that first, and then the second part of that question. How do you see great leaders managing themselves? So how are they, what are they doing for themselves individually? And then we'll talk about employees.
Well, you know, I think a lot of great leaders obviously join organizations like Vistage
Hmm.
because to me, it's all about lifelong learning and they understand that. Um, and as things are changing faster and faster, they've got to be able to keep up with those changes. So that's part of it. I think uh, staying healthy is really
Oh,
critical.
okay.
You know, and I can talk about some leaders that don't do that, but the fact of the matter is that, and I say this to my members all the time, if you don't have your health, then nothing else really matters. You know, forget about the business because, you know, now you're going to be focusing on your health and trying to fix yourself if you can. That's really critical. And I think really great leaders understand that and know that it's not just sitting behind the desk, it's getting up and walking, it's doing exercises, whatever it may be. That's really important for them.
Yeah, I guess that I'm so used to talking about that with you back and forth that I, that is such a good point that I think we take, well, I know I take for granted, but I know a lot of the members, we have those discussions individually and collectively of just how to stay fit and stay healthy for sure. So what about, how are great leaders like managing their employees, and really are there certain things that they're actually doing outside of the couple of things that you mentioned to keep people and engage them as well?
I think that yeah, I think there are. I want to tell you a quick story about one of my members who I know you know,
Hmm.
who is a really great business person. And his business is such that during the pandemic, his business dropped off dramatically. I mean, really dramatically. But he's such a great businessman that he was prepared for those kinds of things. So when other companies were laying people off during the pandemic because they didn't have the business to keep them busy, this gentleman was hiring people.
Hmm.
And he said, you know, this is an opportunity to bring some people into this company that I wouldn't be able to get normally.
Yeah.
And he went out and he hired some really strong people. And those people have taken leadership roles in his company. So, you know, it's those kinds of things. It's empowering your people to do their job. I often hear somebody say, well, you know, I would say, well, why don't you let Tom handle this? Well, he can't do this. Well, how do you know he can't do it? And they don't know because they've never given them the opportunity. And I think when you empower people to do their job, uh, you get much more engagement from that person and you get a lot of growth because you're giving them the opportunity to be their own boss in essence. And that to me is really critical. And I think the more I see of that, the more effective it is. There are still a lot of people who are afraid to let go of things. Uh, and I think and you and I a couple of weeks ago saw the Daniel Pink video where he talked
Hmm.
about the to don't list,
Right. Huge.
which I think is a great idea. Yeah, where people have a to do list, but they don't have a to don't list, where they put on the things on the to don't list that they really should not be doing that other people can do.
So I'm gonna ask you, I'm gonna give you a little time here because I think a good singerism is good in this section. That's why I was smiling and kind of laughing while you were saying it, because you were in my head again, and we just talked about this recently. Because you said with those leaders, we're talking about leaders. When a leader comes to that point, Dick, when they say, "I don't know," what is your response to that? Because I love it, and it's like, oh, so I don't know. What's your response to that?
Well, my response, and by the way, before I say it, I want you to understand this. This is not mine. This is something I learned.
Right.
But when somebody says to me, I don't know, my response is, well, if you did know, what would it be?
Yeah.
And invariably, they will say, I don't know. And I will say, well, if you did know, what would it be? And I'll keep responding that way until they finally get to the point where they figure it out and they give you an answer.
Yeah.
'Cause
And
I don't know is an easy way out, in my opinion.
yeah, it is. But I think a great leader to say that, because the first time I heard that, I was like, that is such a dumb question. I'm like, if I knew, I'd be doing it. Right. And so that's the first reaction. But then when you think about it, like if you knew, like, okay, put yourself in that situation. If you knew, and it's such a great nugget, because that, that goes back to some of our other questions. One, it's great for great leaders, but it's great for their employees to just pose that. Well, what if you did know?
Yeah, right.
Because that leads to that empowerment piece. That's here. Let me show you how I'm going to empower you with these things. So, always a good question, but I appreciate you bringing that up again, because it's just fascinating and anybody that's been in your group for longer than 6 or 8 months has heard it a couple of times for sure.
Yeah.
Um, so with that, Dick, I mean, like wrapping this up, leadership trends for 2023. Are there 3 or 4 things that you would say? Obviously there's a lot of good nuggets in here, but 3 or 4 things for leaders that are listening to this or watching this and say, hey, look, if I were you as a leader, I would focus on these few things. Boom, 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 boom.
I would focus on employee well-being and happiness. I think that's really critical. I would also focus on coaching people. I think leaders have a lot of experience and they can be very good mentors to their employees. And sometimes they don't even realize it. I think you have to create how can I put this? Uh, I think you have to create a psychologically safe culture for
Okay.
your employees so they feel like they can be heard and then they're not afraid to express an opinion. Um, I think that they really need to make sure, and this may be one of the most important things that we really haven't touched on this, I don't think, and that is they have a vision for where they want the company to go. And the question becomes, do your employees know what that vision is? Number one. Number two, do they understand that what they do contributes to that
So,
vision? And that's something that happens a lot, but it also doesn't happen a lot. And I
yeah.
think it's really important for leaders to understand that it's a Simon Sinek, the why of the company.
Right.
If your employees understand that that making this little widget is going to contribute to this vision for the company, that goes a long way for an employee, and they feel like they're part of something. They're building something.
Yeah. Gives them purpose. Yeah.
Yeah,
I like that last tip there. I mean, I like them all, but that one was another nugget as well. But appreciate you spending time. I know you're a busy guy, but really appreciate you just giving us even more wisdom. I mean, you guys, you heard it really from the horse's mouth. Dick is in it each and every day. He's talking to leaders. He hears these things. Take those tidbits, use them. Make your companies better, make your management style better, make your leadership style better. And I think even a couple of these things, Dick, are great to have in your personal life, just
yeah,
to sit and
I
listen
agree.
to your spouse, your significant other, your kids, whoever it might be. But appreciate having you on again. Always a
My
good
pleasure.
time with
Thank you.
you. That's all for today, folks. Thanks for watching. Really appreciate it. If you'd leave a comment and subscribe, hit that subscribe button so you can get notified. You can always visit us at centerforvictory.com. And remember, wherever you're at, whatever you're doing, make this your best day yet. We'll see you next time.